Keefe D named Diddy 77 times in court documents related to Tupac.
The only man currently facing murder charges in the case, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, claims that Sean Combs, also known as Diddy, paid for a hit on Tupac.
The courtroom was electric, every seat packed, every whisper carrying the weight of decades of speculation. And at the center of it all, Sean Diddy Combs, the man once hailed as the kingpin of hip-hop's golden era, now found himself facing allegations that seemed ripped straight from the pages of a crime thriller. For years, the assassination of Shakur had been the unsolvable riddle of the music world, surrounded by conspiracies, finger-pointing, and the eerie silence of those who knew more than they let on. But today, those silences were breaking apart and the sound was deafening.
Right now, Davis is fighting for bail ahead of his murder trial, which he has pleaded not guilty for.
The latest revelations didn't just put Diddy in the frame. They painted him as the architect of a plan that would change the course of music history. The key witness, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, a name that's been floating in the underbelly of this saga for years. But now, Keefe D. wasn't just a name whispered in backrooms or on forums. He was front and center, claiming a role in the actual events of that fateful night in Las Vegas. And what he had to say wasn't just shocking, it was incendiary. In a covert police interview that's now become the backbone of the case, Keefe D alleged that Diddy offered an astronomical bounty to make sure both Shakur and Suge Knight were permanently removed from the picture. Not for business, not for competition, but for survival. According to Keefe D, fear and grudges drove it all. In a covert police interview that's now become the backbone of the case, Keefe D alleged that Diddy offered an astronomical bounty to make sure both Shakur and Suge Knight were permanently removed from the picture. In one particularly damning revelation, he described a meeting at a Los Angeles deli where Diddy allegedly laid it all out. Keefe D claimed Diddy, then riding high as the face of Bad Boy Records, was panicked. The feud between Death Row and Bad Boy had escalated beyond diss tracks and media jabs. It had become personal, and according to Keefe, Diddy allegedly told him, "I'll give anything to get rid of these guys." The implication was terrifyingly clear. This wasn't just about outshining rivals. This was about eliminating them entirely.
The record reflects that Mr. Davis is present in custody.
The circumstances surrounding this meeting read like something out of a noir film. Picture this, a shadowy gathering in a back corner of a D-Lie with Diddy flanked by associates, allegedly laying out his frustrations. On the other side of the table, Keefe D, a streetwise figure with connections deep in the Southside Crips, listening as Diddy reportedly made his plea. For years, this story lingered in the realm of rumor, whispered about but never confirmed. But now it's part of a 180-page court filing that's been described as a roadmap to the assassination of Shakur. Keefe D, in his own words, admitted to providing the weapon that ended Shakur's life. And while he stopped short of claiming he pulled the trigger, he didn't hesitate to implicate others.
Well, he's no different than any other defendant. I mean, we had a feeling this day was coming in the recent history.
Including his own nephew, Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, who was in the backseat of the Cadillac that pulled up alongside Shakur and Suge Knight's car. But let's not forget the chilling details of that night itself. Keefe D painted a vivid picture of the moments leading up to the shooting. He described how they spotted Shakur sticking his head out of the car window, laughing and enjoying the night, completely unaware of what was about to happen. If he wouldn't have been hanging out the window, Keefe D allegedly said, "We might not have even seen him." That brief moment of recognition led to a U-turn, a slow roll to the red light, and then the shots that would echo through hip-hop history. According to Keefe D, the weapon, a Glock concealed in the car's armrest, was handed to the back seat, where the trigger was pulled.
Well, it's a cold case. It's been lingering for 27 years.
And where does Diddy fit into all of this? Keefe D claims he was the one who set it all in motion. The alleged promise of a reward, a figure described in whispers but never confirmed, was the catalyst. Diddy's legal team has, of course, denied these allegations vehemently, calling them fabrications from a man trying to save his own skin. But the prosecution isn't relying on Keefe D's word alone. They've hinted at additional evidence, phone records, financial transactions, and witness testimonies that could corroborate his claims. And then there's the FBI, whose involvement in this case suggests a level of seriousness that's hard to ignore. Reports indicate that federal agents have been quietly piecing together a case that spans decades, with Diddy's name appearing in connection to not just the assassination, but the broader criminal enterprise that allegedly surrounded it.
Any case that's 27 years old sometimes presents some challenges, but we feel very confident that the criminal justice system will work in this case.
But here's where things get even murkier. Keefe D isn't just pointing fingers at Diddy. He's also implicating others in the industry, suggesting that this wasn't the act of a single man, but a conspiracy with multiple layers. The courtroom is now brimming with speculation about who else might be called to testify. Could former associates of Diddy be forced to take the stand? Could records from Bad Boy's heyday reveal hidden transactions, or coded communications, The possibilities are staggering, and they're creating a ripple effect that's shaking the music industry to its core.
The fact that this indictment came down is a little hope, but we want justice for Pac.
And then there's the matter of Keefe D's credibility. Critics have been quick to point out that his story has changed over the years, with details shifting depending on the audience. Some argue that he's exaggerating his role to secure leniency in his own legal troubles, but others see his testimony as the missing piece of the puzzle, the final thread that ties everything together. After all, Keefe D has little to gain from lying at this point. His association with the Southside Crips is well documented, and his proximity to the events of that night is beyond dispute. The question isn't whether he was involved, it's how deep his involvement goes and whether his account can be trusted.
Mr. Davis, have you been able to retain the services of counsel?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm going to need to appoint an attorney to represent you today. Do you understand that?
Meanwhile, Diddy's legal team is fighting tooth and nail to discredit these claims. They've portrayed Keefe D as a desperate man willing to say anything to save himself. They've questioned the timing of his revelations, suggesting they're part of a broader attempt to tarnish Diddy's name. And they've pointed out that no hard evidence has yet been presented linking Diddy directly to the crime. But as the trial unfolds, it's becoming clear that this isn't just about what happened in Las Vegas in 1996. It's about the culture of secrecy and power that allowed these events to unfold in the first place. What's undeniable is the way this case is forcing a reckoning, not just for Diddy, but for an entire era of hip-hop. The East Coast-West Coast feud has always been remembered as a time of creative rivalry and cultural innovation. But beneath the surface, it was a powder keg of egos, alliances, and vendettas waiting to explode. And now, with these allegations coming to light, the romanticized narrative of that era is being stripped away, revealing a darker, more unsettling truth.
I came here today just to tell the truth, so hopefully we can get down to the bottom of this. I'm 100%, the charges against me are 100% false, and hopefully due to time, we'll start to see that.
As the courtroom drama continues, one can't help but feel that we are on the verge of something massive. The allegations against Diddy aren't just a footnote in the story of Shakur's assassination. They're a tectonic shift that could reshape how we understand the music industry itself. And yet, even with all this new information, the story feels far from over, because for every question that's answered, new ones emerged, casting an ever longer shadow over one of the most pivotal moments in music history. And the deeper we go, the more it feels like we're only beginning to scratch the surface.
In her civil lawsuit, Cassie said that she was the victim of abuse, sexual assault, and at the hands of Diddy.
And while Diddy's name looms large over this unfolding chaos, it's impossible to ignore the wider web of bad blood, backdoor deals, and unchecked egos that laid the foundation for this explosive feud. This wasn't just about two men at odds. Shakur and Diddy were merely the faces of something much bigger. Behind them, two record labels, Death Row and Bad Boy, were locked in a battle that was equal parts business and street-level warfare, a conflict that blurred the lines between music and mayhem. What started as a rivalry for chart dominance quickly spiraled into something far more sinister, fueled by the unchecked ambition of their puppet masters, Suge Knight and Diddy himself. The animosity between these two moguls didn't happen overnight. It was a slow burn that turned into an inferno, sparked by insults, inflamed by betrayal, and fanned by betrayal, and fanned by a deep-seated need for control. Suge Knight, the towering and menacing head of Death Row Records, wasn't just a businessman. He was a power player who ruled with fear and intimidation. And Diddy, he was the polished, flashy counterpart. Charismatic on the surface, but as some allege, just as willing to get his hands dirty when it came to protecting his empire. For years, these two men played a high-stakes game of chess, using their artists as pawns and their entourages as knights.
You said we are not done and that Combs did not do this alone. Do you foresee that there could be other charges related to this case?
I'm not taking anything off the table.
But this wasn't just about selling records. It was about dominance, about turning the music industry into their personal battlefield. Suge Knight didn't just want to beat Bad Boy. He wanted to humiliate them, dismantle their empire brick by brick. And Diddy. He wasn't about to roll over. The tension came to a boiling point at the 1995 Source Awards, where Suge famously called out Diddy without naming him directly, accusing him of hogging the spotlight in his artists' careers. It was a public slap in the face, a line drawn in the sand. And from that moment on, the feud wasn't just business, it was personal.
A U.S. judge has ruled that the rapper and producer Sean Diddy Combs will stand trial on federal sex trafficking and racketeering charges in May. He'll be held in prison until then. Sean Combs has pleaded not guilty to charges that he used his business empire to transport women and male sex workers across state lines to take part in recorded performances. If convicted, he could face a life sentence.
The artists caught in the crossfire became unwilling soldiers in a war they didn't sign up for. Shakur, who had initially been close with Biggie, found himself on the opposite side of the battlefield after a botched robbery in 1994 left him wounded and paranoid. He believed, rightly or wrongly, that bad boy had set him up. And when he signed with Death Row, Shug poured gasoline on that paranoia, weaponizing Shakur's rage to fuel his own vendetta against Diddy. Shakur's lyrics became sharper, more venomous, aimed directly at Diddy and Biggie. He wasn't just making music, he was declaring war, and every diss track, every public insult, only added more fuel to the fire.
Hey, real quickly, all that commissary stuff, he's not getting any of that because people in the shoe have an abbreviated list. So he's out of luck, no stake for him. Yeah, he is on suicide watch. This guy thought he would have went home. All of a sudden, he didn't get bond. Remember, the first night that he was there,
But there was something even more calculated happening behind the scenes. Something that went beyond music and personal grudges. Insiders from both camps have since claimed that a network of intermediaries worked overtime to keep the tensions alive. These weren't just industry, yes men, or hype builders. These were people with ties to the streets, individuals who thrived on chaos and knew how to weaponize it for leverage. Rumors have circulated for years about how messages were deliberately miscommunicated, how small insults were blown out of proportion, all to ensure the feud didn't just simmer. A former associate of Death Row once alleged that Shug's team intentionally leaked distorted versions of Shakur's feelings about Diddy to bad boy insiders, knowing it would escalate things further. And on the flip side, whispers suggest that Diddy's camp wasn't above fanning the flames, feeding Shakur's paranoia through back channels. It was a psychological chess match, where both sides played dirty and no one cared about the cost.
and I understand that he has a shrink coming by his cell to see him several times a day. And now there's talk about putting him in, it's like a bubble. It's like a cell that has like a plexiglass wall in it where they have inmates watching you. That's actually their job, to keep an eye on the inmates that are on suicide watch.
And the cost was staggering. Beyond the headlines and album sales, there was a real human toll to this war of egos. Entourages grew larger and more hostile, with each side stockpiling allies like ammunition. Entire neighborhoods were drawn into the feud, with loyalties dictated not by personal grievances but by geographic and cultural lines. If you were West Coast, you were Team Shakur. If you were East Coast, you were Team Biggie. There was no in-between. And as the feud escalated, so did the stakes. Artists who tried to remain neutral found themselves caught in the crossfire, their reputations and in some cases, their safety put on the line. The streets became an extension of the boardroom, and the boardroom became an extension of the streets. By the time Shakur signed with Death Row, the lines weren't just drawn, they were etched in stone, with no way back for anyone involved.
Okay, some people do think that Diddy can help him, but this guy's going to be locked up forever. His case will probably take at least 3 years to litigate. He'll stay at MDC. There's rumors that he wants to go to Essex County Jail in New Jersey because he doesn't like MDC. He's a Marshall's inmate. There's no way they're going to transfer him back and forth, I don't know, several times a week.
But here's the thing. This wasn't just a feud for the cameras. This was a manufactured drama to sell records. There were real stakes, real consequences. The entourages that followed these men weren't just background props. They were street-hardened crews with real grudges and real firepower. The line between the boardroom and the streets was razor thin, and it didn't take much for things to spill over. And when they did, the fallout was catastrophic. By the time the dust settled, two of hip-hop's brightest stars, Shakur and Biggie, were gone, and the industry was left reeling. What's even more chilling is how much of this was orchestrated behind the scenes. According to insiders, both Shug and Diddy played their roles like master manipulators, pulling strings while keeping their hands ostensibly clean. Shug allegedly bankrolled street crews to handle his dirty work, while Diddy, as some claim, used his money and connections to insulate himself from the chaos he helped create. It was a game of plausible deniability, a way to keep their empires intact while the people around them bore the brunt of the violence. And for years, it worked. Shug and Diddy emerged as untouchable titans, while the people in their orbit, artists, associates, even friends, became collateral damage.
Those individuals allegedly included high-ranking supervisors in the business, personal assistants, security staff, and household staff.
But now, decades later, the cracks are starting to show. The testimonies emerging in court don't just implicate Diddy in Shakur's demise. They paint a damning picture of an entire culture of excess and ruthlessness that these men cultivated. The allegation suggests that Diddy didn't just sit back and watch the feud unfold. He actively stoked it, allegedly making backroom deals and promises that would set the wheels of violence in motion. And while Diddy's legal team has dismissed these claims as baseless, the sheer volume of evidence and testimony is hard to ignore. It's not just Keefe D pointing fingers anymore. There are whispers of others, former associates, disgruntled employees, who are ready to come forward, ready to tell their side of the story. And what about Suge Knight? While he currently sits behind bars on unrelated charges, his shadow looms large over this case. There are rumors that he, too, might be called to testify, though what he might say is anyone's guess. Suge has always been an enigma, a man who thrives on chaos and controversy. Would he back up Keefe D's claims? Or would he throw more fuel on the fire, implicating Diddy even further? One thing is certain, if Suge takes a stand, it's going to be explosive.
I think it's to be expected, just the shock of this and the questions about what is ahead of us. I mean, how long is he going to be in custody? Is this an R. Kelly situation? Is he going to not get out for a number of years? Is he going to end up serving a long-term prison sentence from this? Or does he have a chance of beating these charges at a trial that could come?
The courtroom drama is only part of the story. Behind the scenes, there's a growing sense of unease within the music industry. Diddy's empire, once seen as invincible, is now under siege. His brand, his legacy, even his future, all of it hangs in the balance. And the ripple effects are being felt far and wide. Artists who once worked with Diddy are now questioning their loyalties. Executives who once admired him are now distancing themselves. And fans, many of whom grew up idolizing him, are grappling with the possibility that their hero might not be the man they thought he was.
It's a question of that, but when you read through the indictment, it's pretty clear who could be indicted as a co-conspirator. Right now, there are people in the indictment who would be considered unnamed co-conspirators, but clearly have played a role in this conspiracy. And I think prosecutors have some big leverage on them because they're hoping that they testify against Diddy as prosecution witnesses.
The more you dig, the darker it gets. Because this isn't just about Diddy. It's about an entire system that allowed men like him and Suge to rise to power unchecked. It's about an industry that prioritized profits over people, that turned a blind eye to the violence and corruption festering beneath the surface. And it's about a culture that celebrated excess and bravado even as it devoured its own.
But there's also strategic reasons for the prosecutors to want him to have co-defendants, because right now he hasn't waived his right to a speedy trial, which would force prosecutors to take him to trial pretty quick, which they actually might not be ready to do. But if they supersede him and have co-defendants with him, it makes it a lot easier to pursue a trial continuance without him waiving his speedy trial right.
So where does that leave us? The trial is far from over, and the truth, whatever that may be, has yet to fully come to light. But one thing is clear. This story isn't just about the past. It's about the present, about the choices we make and the legacies we leave behind. And as more details emerge, as more secrets are dragged into the light, the question isn't just what happened to Shakur, it's what happens next. What do you think? Is Diddy just a victim of circumstance? Or is there more to his story than meets the eye? Are we about to see one of the biggest takedowns in music history? Or is this just another chapter in a saga that never seems to end? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives like this. Trust us, you're not going to want to miss what's coming next.